So good evening and welcome to the Neighborhood Passion Affinity Network presented by Google and Neighbor to Neighbor. Our presenting sponsor tonight is Google, and tonight we'll be focusing on one of 8 key neighborhood passions, neighborhood beautification and the environment. Our presenting sponsor for this series is Republic Services, and our topic tonight is preventing sewer clogs and overflows. For those of you who are familiar with this topic, sanitary sewers and storm drain overflows pollute our streams and do present health hazards to people, pets, and wildlife. A clog in the main sewer line or in the storm drain can affect your home as well as your neighbors. In some cases, it may result in raw sewage backup into pipes coming out of your drains. If you get to know the signs of a problem and take actions early on, you can prevent serious damage and health concerns. To help us understand what is really a complex issue, I think, in some ways, although there's straightforward answers for it, is Kevin Schmidt. And Kevin is a public information representative from Metro Water Services, and he regularly speaks to neighborhood and community groups about this and other topics. So I want to welcome Kevin. Thanks for being here, Kevin.
Thank you all for having me. I'm pretty excited to have the opportunity to speak with all of y'all tonight, especially about issues that really do impact all of us, and not just in like our homes, but also in our neighborhoods, communities, and leading out to the state once we get back to the Cumberland River. So I'm very excited to have this chance. So thank y'all.
And when we started, Kevin, and started talking about this, one of the things that you brought up that we probably should hit first is this whole thing about the differences and similarities between sewer drains and stormwater. And so can you help us with understand that a little bit?
Absolutely. So I think one of the common things that people often mistake for a sewage drain is the storm drain kind of outside of their home, what you see in your neighborhood that water runs into when it rains, or if somebody's washing their car and water runs into that drain. That is different than your sewage line. And there is a lot of general confusion around that. As a kid, and probably up until I was 18 or 20, to be honest, I thought that they were mostly the same thing, that they went to the same place. But the storm drains that are in your neighborhood, the culverts, those 90% of them, they all go straight to the Cumberland River. As to where your sewage pipes, your sewage lines, those will all go to your local wastewater treatment plant.
Is that the same everywhere?
As far as in Nashville or?
In Nashville.
So there is a little bit of a difference when you're talking, like, especially in our downtown corridor and a little bit in East Nashville, where we do have a combined system. And in normal times, that stormwater and the sewage, they are diverted through an automatic system where we will get sewage that goes straight to our, in this case, the central wastewater treatment plant, which is right off of 2nd Avenue. And the stormwater will go to the Cumberland River. However, in times of an overflow, where we have torrential downpour, where you're talking in the realm of 3 to 5 inches, like within an hour, that system will get overwhelmed, and all of that water will get sent to the central wastewater treatment plant because it's too much to be diverted. And we know at that point that all of the water is going to need to be treated and cleaned before it goes back into the Cumberland.
So where do you want to begin tonight? Where should we start this conversation?
I think probably the best place to begin is in the home, where we talk about essentially fats, oils, and grease and other things that don't need to go either down your kitchen sink or oftentimes down the toilet, to include Q-tips and flushable wipes and those types of things, which can lead to a sewer line blockage that would severely impact your home, either through a backup or it gets clogged a little further out, say into your yard, and you have a pipe burst, and then you have sewage that is now in your yard, which will obviously impact not just you, but your neighbors.
And so if we continue that process of home out to the street, what other concerns do we have?
The biggest concern, I think, from our end is the environmental concern, where if you have a backup or you have a sewage pipe burst due to fat oils and grease or other, non-flushables that go down your drain, if that backs up and it's not noticed, or if a pipe bursts and it goes into one of your nearby, creeks or streams, or in a lot of cases, people don't realize that it's happened. The first place that it's actually going to flow to is out into the street. And then it goes into a storm drain, which is then sent to the Cumberland River. And the last thing that we want to do is to send that directly to the Cumberland River without being treated. It's important for the environment, but it's also just important that we are a good steward of Tennessee's water, because everybody is downstream from someone. And when you think about that, you want to make sure that the water that is going back into the Cumberland is as clean as it possibly can be, not just for the recreational activities that occur at the Cumberland River and in all of our other waterways, but for those that receive our water downstream from us, other communities as well.
You mentioned a minute ago non-flushables. So in my recycling experience, I
Yes.
always get confused about what can be recycled and what can't. I think that there are probably people that get confused about what you mean, what can be flushed and what can't. Can you spell that out for us?
Yes, it's very simple. The only thing that should be flushed is poop, pee, and toilet paper. And that's it. And there's confusion specifically around what's been marketed as flushable wipes. The biggest problem with flushable wipes is they do not break down. They will, if they make it out of your home's plumbing, they will wind up at our wastewater treatment facilities. And they wrap around our gears. And essentially, once a month, we'll have to shut down a portion of our system so somebody can go in there and get those out by hand. So they're having to go into our, a lot of times they're called grit tanks, where we have to drain them, and they go in, and you have wipes and other things that shouldn't be flushed down the toilet, which are now causing issues with our equipment. Fortunately, we operate on redundancy, where we do have the ability to shut down and not lose any of our ability to clean water. But it is something that we would like to not have to do.
Wow. Okay. And is this a big problem? I mean, I know it's a big problem when it happens, but is it a common problem for Nashville?
Yes, it is a very common problem. As a matter of fact, we were doing an event in Antioch this past weekend for pencil for school children. And one of the biggest reactions that we got were people that didn't realize that things that were marketed to them as flushable wipes are actually causing backups in their home, and they're causing backups in our greater system.
So you have education programs about that, right?
Yes, we do. Yeah.
So
go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
All of that. This is my quick plug. If you don't like and follow us on social media, please do. You will get to see all of the great information that we design and put out, especially centered around things that should not go down your drain into the toilet. And next month in August, we're going to have a whole week dedicated to fat oils and grease and other non-flushables.
And this is something a lot of times you all spend a lot of effort on educating people about this. But for those of you who are part of that are in charge of a neighborhood organization, or you're communicating with the larger community, This is really something that you can easily share in newsletter or at meetings. Kevin is, I'm sure, and his group is willing to come out and talk to your neighborhoods. If I remember correctly, you all have a really good display for events that can be brought out to help people understand that issue as well. So it's a really good opportunity to educate people. And while the environment is important, the other thing that I'm thinking of, Kevin, you tell me, is this costs us a lot of money. And these clogs and time that could be spent doing other things for Metro Water Services.
I mean, that's correct. I think one of the ways that I like to, especially that I like to discuss fat soils and grease and clogs, is that when you're putting these things into your sink or down your toilet, if it doesn't cause a backup in your own home, which is going to cost money, it's going to eventually cost us more money in man hours and infrastructure repairs. So at some point, we are all either paying for it within our own home or we're paying for it as a community. And this is just kind of within infrastructure costs and man hours as well.
What else is there that we need to talk about when we're talking about sewer clogs? Anything we've missed?
I don't believe so, unless there are some general questions about it. I know that there's a segment for questions at the end, but I'll leave that up to you, Jim.
Yes, and we're gonna move next into storm drains, right? But does anybody have any questions about the sewer drains and clogs? Carolyn.
My question is, in the Antioch area, in our water system is black. I don't know if it's mold or what it is, but I don't drink the water because in the toilet, it makes black, in the rim. And then in the water in the sink, it has black in my faucet. So why is that? Because I'm scared to really drink the water because there's so much black coming out of the water.
Yes, ma'am. I can understand why you would be hesitant about that. I would think that the rings in the toilet, that's generally caused by a common bacteria that's just found in people's homes. And that'll just occur normally. However, if you have black coming out of your faucet, yes, I would highly encourage you. I would like for you to send me an email. Okay. I'll send that to you because I'd like to know a little bit more about the situation specifically. If it is you, if it's an area. So I'm going to put my email in the chat and I would love for you to send that to me. That way we can get some more information for you.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So before we move on, since Carolyn brought up the question about her water, if people are getting water coming out of their faucet and it doesn't look right, is that something that they need to call the Metro Water Services about? Is it something they call 311? Or do they go to a plumber first? What's the first thing they should be doing?
I think the first thing that you should do is definitely report it to Hub Nashville. If you go to hub.nashville.gov, there will be a section where you can put in that kind of information. And that ensures that it gets directed to the right person. And that way it doesn't just get lost. And I mean, how many times have all of us gone to a government site or a large company site and you see an email and you're just like, that's not going to go anywhere. I don't think that's going to get read. But the Hub Nashville site is actually, there's accountability involved for that information to get sent out and for it to get answered. So please, if you have concerns, report it to hub.nashville.gov.
I'm a frequent user of Hub Nashville, and it's always really nice that as soon as the comment's made, I get an email saying a case has been opened with a case number, and then when it closes, I get a report back. So there is good accountability for that system. Yeah. Any other questions before we move on to stormwater?
I have a question, not related to stormwater, but water quality. I live in a newer subdivision, and we had issue not only with the ring as far as like the black stuff in the water, but also the odor. Like the water has an odor, and so we filed like we through the hood. We I guess I would say a complaint or a and the water company, Metro Water, that came and they flushed the hydrants. They said that it was an issue due to maybe the lines, like it was air or gas that had built up in the lines prior to them building. But even after them flushing it, we still have like a really strong odor.
Yeah. So the odor that you're talking about, is it just really quick? Is it kind of like an earthy type smell, or
Man,
is it more of like a chlorine smell?
no, it's not chlorine. It's I have my wife right here. I'll ask her. How would you describe the odor of the water? Her first word was rotten, but it's like it really smells bad. Like to the point where if you cut the shower on, if you get ready to brush your teeth, like at one point we were using bottled water because it was just that bad.
So unfortunately, about every summer we will have issues with taste and odor, and it is something that we do monitor. That's caused by algae blooms that occur in the Cumberland. And so those algae blooms, they do create that smell. Not harmful, and we do our best to treat it with activated carbon. However, there's only so much activated carbon that we can put into the treatment process before it potentially clogs our filters. So, and the last thing that we want to do is sacrifice the safety and cleanliness of the water for appearance. So it is a balancing act when we have these algae blooms. I hope that kind of answers your questions, Deontay. Again, if you have something more specific, please, by all means, email me and we can get some more specific answers for you.
Absolutely, Kevin. Thank you.
Okay, Kevin, let's talk about storm drains and what we can do there.
So with storm drains, one of our most common causes for localized flooding is debris on storm drains and clogged or debris that's also in culverts where people will put their tree trimmings and grass as it waits to get picked up, as opposed to taking it out to the edge of the yard outside of the culvert. A lot of people actually put it in the culvert, and then when it rains, you've essentially created a dam that is going to back up water, especially when there's a heavy downpour. And you can imagine that is going to cause some localized neighborhood flooding or localized to your house flooding because the culvert is backed up or your storm drain is backed up. And on the topic of storm drains, we have over 42,000 inlets in Davidson County. And while we are aware of hotspot areas that we go out to and clear when heavy rainfall is predicted, you can imagine that it isn't feasible for us to get to 42,000 inlets to ensure that they're clear. So one of the biggest things that can help assist us in preventing localized flooding is if you see your storm drain that's by your house or in your neighborhood, or if you have a neighborhood community group, you can just sweep the grass off or make sure that people aren't putting their grass trimmings, the bags after yards are cut, in the way of the storm drains, because that is one of our biggest causes for neighborhood flooding and the biggest reasons that we will get called out in the middle of a storm to try and clear these storm drains that are backed up. And in heavy rain, that kind of creates a danger for our Metro Water employees that have to go out, especially the late at night downpours where they're trying to clear storm drains so it doesn't cause issues with traffic.
And if I'm not mistaken, one of the property codes specifically prohibits people cutting their grass and blowing it onto the streets for that very reason.
That's absolutely correct. And it would be incredible if everybody followed that. We would absolutely love that. And unfortunately, things happen. Sometimes maybe it's not anything where I'm going to intentionally ignore this code. It's just, sometimes life gets in the way and you might forget and put something in the way of a storm drain. But if you see it and you can have a relationship where you can remind your neighbor or even potentially your spouse to not put debris in front of the storm drain, it would be a huge help. And it would actually be a great thing for your neighborhood as well, especially if you live in a neighborhood where you do see increased water during heavy rains.
I was watching just before right after the last storm, there was a fellow on at the street from us who was taking the limbs that had fallen off the trees, and rather than taking them to the back of his house for the sheriff's office to pick up, he was taking some of the limbs and putting them down the sewer drain or the storm drain. And that just doesn't, that's not right, as they say.
Right. It is. Sometimes people will do something for their convenience, not realizing the inconvenience that it's not just going to cause them, but it's going to cause their neighbors and community later. And, living in Nashville, one of the last things that anybody wants to have to work through would be flood damage, I think.
And one of the things that you can do as neighborhood leaders is, as a storm's approaching, or when we get to the rainy season, which is, 365 days of the year. But no, I mean, there are certain times, is at those times, make sure that you're including in your communications a reminder to people to make sure that their drain's clean or clear. That just would be a huge help because Kevin and I were talking earlier before we started. They could actually have enough people on Metro Water Services to cover the whole area and make sure no drain is clogged, but your taxes would be so high that you couldn't afford to live in the city anymore. It's just not realistic. And we have the same problem with the police. We could have a police officer on every corner, but we couldn't afford to live here. And so we as citizens have to take some responsibilities to make sure that the drains are clean and that our neighborhood's safe. And all of those are very important. And Kevin, I think we were talking, and there's actually a program where, is it residents or neighborhood groups can adopt storm drains?
That's correct. We do have an adopt a storm drain program. And just like kind of an adopt a street program, it could be a resident, it could be a neighborhood. One of the things that comes with that, and I will put it in the chat. So thank you for the quick plug on that. One of the things that comes with it, there is a reporting aspect of it, and that helps us identify hotspots that we may be unaware of. So it could allow us to know, okay, we might need to do some additional work in culverts in this neighborhood or this area. So if you are interested, if you think your neighborhood Facebook group or your neighborhood next door group would have any interest in adopting a storm drain, it would be a very nice thing. And you'll have to forgive me. I'm going to do some typing here while I pull up the Adopt a Storm Drain website so I can put it in the chat.
What questions do you all have for Kevin?
I have a question. First, while you're talking about the Adopt a Storm Drain, what does that involve?
So the Adopt a Storm Drain program, it involves adopting a specific storm drain kind of usually it's one of the storm drains that are in your neighborhood. And it would just involve sweeping and clearing the storm drain, and then answering some questions after it rains. Was there a backup? Was there increased debris near the storm drain after it rained? So it's just kind of it's meant to be fairly simple. That way, because we don't want to overwhelm people when they're doing something that really could be extremely beneficial for us and the community as a whole.
And I have another question also. In my backyard, after we have a heavy rain, there has been holes that have formed in my backyard. And after a heavy rain, water comes out of them. And in the line, and these holes are all in like a line.
Okay.
And I followed it to where there's a place in the grass where it says sewer. It's a big old plate in the ground and it says sewer.
Okay.
I filled up those holes, and first I thought it was an animal living in those holes. So I filled it up with dirt, and every time it rains, the water pushes the dirt out. I put rocks in there and water and dirt, and the holes come back. And now the holes are big enough. If someone were to walk through my yard at night, they would actually, if they stepped in it, they could break a leg.
Okay.
So I don't know what else to do. I don't know what those holes are or where they came from, but they're in a straight line, and the line, kind of leads to where that plate that says sewer on it.
I don't have a good answer for this specific problem right now, but Vanessa, I would really like for you to email me with kind of the brief description that you told me, with your address, and then also just for our purposes, your Metro Water Services account number. And that way we can make sure that we get this directed to the right department, whether that be our stormwater department or somewhere else. That way we can follow up and check on this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You said my address and what else?
Your Metro Water Services account number.
Okay. Metro Water Services.
And Kevin, is this the type of thing? Vanessa's lucky you're here. We got your email address tonight. But typically, if this would happen and she wasn't here, would it be really try 311 first or Hub Nashville?
Hub Nashville, absolutely, yeah. Because that would ensure that it would either get directed to customer service, stormwater, or one of our other divisions, whether that be system services, et cetera. But we definitely I definitely want to know more about that and want to get that followed up on for you. If that was in my yard, I would be asking those questions too.
I asked my councilman about it, and he said he was going to come and look at it. That never happened. So.
He didn't have the right tools to come out and look at it. Metro Water Service has the right tools.
I'll agree with that.
And so, Kevin, that does bring up, if there's a problem anywhere from the house to the street, Metro Water fixes it?
No, actually, actually we don't, but we can check on it for you. Generally from anywhere from your meter to your home is the responsibility of the property owner, whether that be a landlord or an apartment complex or yourself. Anything from the meter outside, that would generally be something we would check on. However, Vanessa, in your situation, I think that's something we want to check on.
All right. Ed Branding has his hand up. Go ahead, Ed.
Do you do actual stormwater remediation and all that in your water services, or is that a separate part of Metro?
No, that is Metro Water Services. If did you have a further question?
The question I had is, I grew up at the foot of 9 Mile Hill, which is that big hill going out to Bellevue.
Okay.
And one of the things that I did that was a part of my soil and water conservation merit badge stuff was my father and I built some check dams in the ditch out in front of the house, because all those houses in that hilly area that were built in the 60s, of course, they don't have sewer and all that kind of stuff, or didn't at the time. And they all have ditches in front for the water flow. And Metro at the time would come out and do something. And I forget exactly what it was, but they would do something in the check dam area. And then, like I say, Dad and I did some stuff, and I don't remember what it was. Does Metro still get involved in that type of work with erosion prevention, or are they mainly in the pipe business these days?
No, we do work in erosion prevention, especially when it comes to new developments, and especially developments now where you have 3 homes on what used to be 1 lot. And there's a lot of checks and balances to try and ensure that it won't increase the likelihood of erosion.
Okay. And I forget, Dad and I did a lot of digging out there, and the check dams, those concrete slats that slow down the water. Like I say, I didn't know if Metro still had a check dam program. As more and more development heads out into the more rural areas where erosion is a real issue because of the terrain out there. And if so, I didn't know if there was a person with whom to speak about that program. If somebody needs it.
I can't speak specifically to if there is a check dam program, but our stormwater division is constantly going out and checking for erosion, making sure our culverts are clear, making sure that neighborhoods are not being impacted by developers that aren't doing the right thing. So we do have a very active stormwater division.
Who would be a good person with whom to speak to get pointed in the right direction out at Water Services?
If you want, I can send you all that information after the meeting.
Great. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Don't forget to send your email address to Kevin, Ed.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right. Well, we are coming up on the 7 o'clock hour. Kevin, is there anything that you want to reemphasize, or anything we forgot to say tonight that you wanted to share?
I would like to reemphasize, please, do not flush, quote unquote, flushable wipes. Do not put anything down your toilet that is not toilet paper, poop, or pee. It's very important for our system. Once we start opening tours up again, we will do announcements. I'd love to see y'all come do a tour of either our water treatment facilities or our wastewater treatment facilities. It is really kind of an astounding thing. And I will say, as coming into work at Metro Water Services has given me a great appreciation for the future planning that Metro Water Services has done to ensure the sustainability of Nashville's water system, and just for the technicalities of the work that's done at all of our facilities. So if you're interested, please follow, and subscribe to us on all social media. That way you can find out when tours are happening, and please come see us.
And Kevin, did I understand that there's something like a water academy? Did I read that somewhere?
You did read that. We have a Citizens Water Academy, and our next one will be happening in September. We'll be doing announcements on that. You'll see it on our Facebook page, our Twitter page, on our Nextdoor page. There is an application process. So you submit an application and we'll review it and accept you into the Citizens Water Academy. It'll be a 4-day experience of presentations and tours, culminating in a tour of the Omohundro facility.
Okay.
And we use that as a selling point because it's really the only time that we give tours is if it is with the Citizens Water Academy. And it is, I'm sure as you all know, if you've seen pictures, it is an absolutely gorgeous facility with some great history and some great work that's being done there.
Okay. If there are no other questions, going once, twice, 3 times, Kevin, thank you for being here tonight. Appreciate you being here, and thanks to our audience. I want to encourage you all to come back next week. Let me pull this up here. So next week, special topic and a special guest. Tawana Chick's coming. And for those of you who know Tawana, you know that she was involved in a shooting a couple of weeks ago and survived that experience and has been in the hospital. And I was quite committed not to canceling that session and not doing it, but she called from the hospital to tell me that she was wanting to do it. And so that she'll be here next week. So Cane Ridge is out there in the Antioch 37013, and they are having lots of new development. And a couple of years ago, the Cane Ridge Community Club adopted what they call the Community Declaration Resource. And any developer that wants to develop in their neighborhood and get approval from their neighborhood group has to comply with the Community Declaration Resource. And she's going to come to next week and tell us how that was created and exactly what it is and how it's working in negotiations with the developments that are happening in her area. So I encourage you to come back and see that. Thank you all for being here tonight. Have a great week, and remember that great neighborhoods don't happen by accident. It takes committed and involved and engaged citizens working hard that really makes the difference. So have a great week, and we'll see you next time.